right, Professor Reese back at you with another segment of African American history. Today, we're going to talk about the Jim Crow era. We talked about Reconstruction and what that meant, where the states were trying to come back together. But of course, the South was very resistant to that idea. So they invoked laws that were called Jim Crow. And those laws really revolved around keeping Black people, once again, separated from whites. So you had laws that said you can't drink out of the same fountain, you can't use the same bathrooms, they would not serve you at restaurants. So let's delve into the Jim Crow.
Race in America, a unique problem. Self-reflection is necessary for solving. How did we get here? Aren't we all equal? Does the legacy of slavery still impact people? We gotta think about how this country was built, to examine some attitudes that exist still. Racist attitudes over time evolve. They go back to what were known as Jim Crow laws, a wide-ranging set of laws and customs. They were written into law, and society enforced them. Separate schools, pools, and ticket booths, and interracial marriage was illegal too. Every part of daily life was restricted. For Blacks in the South, the system was wicked. This was post-slavery and post-reconstruction. Protection for Blacks was totally given up on. You see, some whites believed in fixed racial order, that whites were superior over all others. And if Jim Crow laws were broken, violence and lynchings were the repercussions. For instance, Emmett Till was lynched at 14 years old. Reportedly, he looked at a white woman and whistled. This was 60 years ago. Not that long, and this Jim Crow mindset lingers on.
You gotta look back to learn what it was will be. And listen, the past ain't always pretty. What you know about Jim Crow? It shows what American history is so simple. Gotta look back to learn what it was will be. And listen, the past ain't always pretty. What you know about Jim Crow? It shows what American history is so simple. So old Jim Crow settled over the South, and those with the means to do so got out. Thousands fled in the Great Migration, heading north to escape strict segregation. Others stayed and took major risks to fight Jim Crow and seek justice. The fight to end Jim Crow had just begun, and things got real with Plessy vs. Ferguson. This was 50 years before Rosa Parks. Homer Plessy sat in a whites-only train car. The case was heard before the Supreme Court. The ruling is how separate but equal was born. Pretty dark time, but there was still a spark that became a fire. Activists did their part. Booker T. Washington, a former slave, believed educated Blacks would bring about change. With education, he saw financial freedom, so he founded Tuskegee Institute for his people. And the NAACP was founded by W.E.B. Du Bois to protect Black lives after decades of injustice and Jim Crow laws, and the NAACP fighting them in court. These things formed the perfect storm in '54. Brown versus the Board of Ed in the Supreme Court, and Thurgood Marshall successfully argued that separation was not equal. This ruling overturned Plessy Ferguson and ended laws that supported segregation. Jim Crow was no longer the law of the land, but it didn't disappear overnight. Understand? The fight for your rights is a fight for your life. So when the story is told, be on the right side. You gotta look back to learn what it was will be. And listen, the past ain't always pretty. What you know about Jim Crow? It shows what American history is so simple. Gotta look back to learn what it was will be. And listen, the past ain't always pretty. What you know about Jim Crow? It shows what American history is so simple. Gotta look back to learn what it was will be. And listen, the past ain't always pretty. What you know about Jim Crow? It shows what American history is so simple.
Okay, scholars, good job on learning about Jim Crow. Second, we're going to close with an African proverb, but before we do that, I'd like to say that I truly enjoyed these two lessons, but we're going to keep it moving because from Reconstruction and the Jim Crow era, we then go into blacks leaving the South because of Jim Crow laws, and they just weren't being treated the way they wanted to be treated as human beings. So where we go from here is the Great Migration, when we had tons of African Americans that moved from South to North. And then from the Great Migration, we go into one of my favorite eras. Love it, love it, love it, because of the music, the dress, the art. We go into the Harlem Renaissance. Okay, in closing, we're going to close with an African proverb. And the proverb for today is, if you are filled with pride, then you have no room for wisdom. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll see you next time when we talk about the Great Migration and the Harlem Renaissance. Thanks for joining. Have a great day.